Pokemon collectors right now are currently losing thousands of dollars on their collections, and it seems each day more modern Pokemon cards are crumbling in price. So what does this mean for the future? Though before we get into this topic, I'm actually gifting one subscriber this Heracross illustration rare. Now if I reply to your comment with this Celebi emoji, then well done, you've won this card. And also if you do love giveaways, I actually am going live on Whatnot on June 27th at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and I'm giving away over 50 packs of Destined Rivals once again, and I'm going to speak more about that live stream in this video and how you can earn a $15 credit. Though I think a question that's coming up a lot right now is what is actually happening with modern Pokemon cards, and more importantly, will they recover from what seems to be a never-ending downfall? Now, there's a lot of contrasting opinion about the situation. You've got one corner of people who are very grateful and cheering the heavy price reductions right now. They're all saying, hey, see all you fools overpaying on Pokemon cards. And then you've got others getting pretty stressed because they can see their collections falling in value. Though truthfully, I have to be honest, the market was way too inflated, and this is incredibly necessary right now to have these price reductions. Though I do think there's a lot of layers to uncover in this video, and I'm going to be going into the detail why modern Pokemon cards are experiencing such a big market pullback. And no, it's not just because it's the summer period. There's actually a lot more layers to what's happening at the moment. Though I have to be real, man, the tension is building, and I think for a lot of newcomers, there's a lot of people confused why prices are falling so rapidly. And I think one of the best ways is to go through some of the top chase cards, just look at these at the moment and see what's going on and actually find out the why. Now, in terms of the chase cards at the moment that we need to really look into, there's probably a bit too many chase cards in the Scarlet and Violet era. I just feel there's so many desired cards. No one even knows what the real chasers of this era are anymore because the line is just so blurred. There's Bubble Mew, there's the Prismatic Evolutions Umbreon, there's Greninja, there's Pikachu, it just goes on and on. And then because of Prismatic Evolutions, all these high priced cards have come in, and I feel like with Sword and Shield or with Sun and Moon, people knew what the chase cards were, like they were more established, right? Right now, it's just so confusing, and with the market and how it's behaving, I feel like no one even knows what's the most desired card at the moment. Now, really looking into the Greninja Special Illustration Rare from Twilight Masquerade. Now, this one to me is a very beloved card because it was kind of one of the turning points. Now, the reason why it's such an important card is because when Twilight Masquerade came out, we didn't really have any chase card. We had the Magikarp illustration rare, but most people were still looking back at the Sword and Shield era, and all those cards, your Giratina V, your Moonbreon, all the evolutions, they were the top players of the Sword and Shield era, and people were focused on those. Everyone said, well, Scarlet and Violet era is not going to have a chase card like that. And it wasn't until this Greninja came out where people said, hey, we've actually got a real good competitor. So you can see the Greninja was selling for $410 in February. Right now selling for $286. So you can see there is a significant pullback happening in the market. That is not a small amount of value to come off a card. In fact, if that keeps going, it could even end up at half price with how quickly it's dropping at the moment. Same thing when we're looking at the Pikachu Special Illustration Rare. A lot of people are kind of debating about this card at the moment. A lot of people saying it was overhyped. The reality is the pullback for this card is very, very significant. You can see selling for $485 US in January of this year. Right now selling for $290. Huge pullback, okay? That's not even a joke. That's actually getting massive amounts of value falling off this card, especially if you bought it in January, and a lot of people did. You know, you can actually see the effects on the market right now. Very important one here is the Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. You can see selling for $104 US. Right now selling for $51 US. Half price, dude. Half price. What, you want a 50% off sale? You know, when your favorite game goes on sale? Dude, there you go. Your Eevee right now, 50% off. A lot of people are going, wow, what's happening? Why are cards dropping like this? What's going on? Well, here's the thing. We've got a bit of fatigue happening with modern Pokemon collecting, and I think a lot of people just can't keep up anymore. You know, I make this content. I'm looking at Pokemon cards every day, and I'm just saying, wow, with all these illustration rares, we got the whole Black Bolt, White Flare coming out. We've got so many new cards coming out. It's just getting hard to tell what's an awesome card, what's a chase card, what's desired. Even if it's a rare, does it even matter anymore? Because there's just so many cards coming on the market. You can see the Magikarp selling for $276 US in February. Right now selling for $201 US. So you can see the Magikarp has also had a pretty big market pullback as well. Not as big as the Pikachu, not as big as the Greninja, but definitely a lot of value is coming off. And these data points are very important to understand when we're talking about modern collecting at the moment. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm actually going live and giving away 50 packs of Destined Rivals on 27th of June, 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I'll also be auctioning off some Pokemon packs starting at $1. Now, today's video is sponsored by Whatnot. Now, if you've never used Whatnot before, it's a live shopping platform where users can bid and purchase products across the app in real time. And what's really cool is that Pokemon cards and trading cards are a very big area on the platform. If you're new and you've never used it, definitely feel free to jump on my stream to try it out. It's a real chill way to learn the platform, and you can participate in the giveaways or even buy a pack, and also get $15 off your first purchase by using the link on screen or scanning the QR code. Now, okay, it is true, during the European and US summer period, Pokemon cards do fall in price. It is very common, and almost it's like clockwork. You can almost guarantee it. If it's winter, Pokemon cards rise in price. Soon as summer comes around, they come tumbling down. However, the reason why this summer period has had a bit more spite in it is because of the Pokemon TCG Pocket boom. So Pokemon TCG Pocket was the mobile game that released in November 2024. Now, this is actually one of the most crucial time periods to learn about in terms of the Pokemon hobby. Now, in terms of how we can gauge how popular Pokemon cards are at any given time, we don't really have much access to any of that information, though one of the easy ways I find is to look at the Google search trends for the search term Pokemon cards. Now, Pokemon TCG Pocket released in November of 2024, and you can see how much more search volume has come in since its release. There's only so much ways you can collect data or, any analytics about popularity. So I do work in marketing. That is my profession outside of this channel, okay? And I mean, everyone knows how popular Pokemon cards are at the moment. I mean, if you want to go to a store and you want to buy a Red Bull and you want to buy a Pokemon pack, you'll walk out with 2 Red Bulls because you're not going to find any Pokemon cards. But here is what is happening. You can see the interest over time on Google Trends. Now, here is the past 5 years of Pokemon cards. So you can see right there, that is the vintage boom. And you can see that search volume really spiked during the vintage boom. The whole Charizard base set kind of craze, pandemic, everyone was just like all obsessed with vintage cards. Then it kind of faded away, but you can see during the winter of 2022, when the Sword and Shield era was ending and Crown Zenith kind of released, you can see Pokemon cards once again became popular again. Now you can see after that, they kind of dwindled in popularity. Now, what's really interesting, you can see there was that little period there where Pokemon cards were just not as popular as they were during 2020 and 2021. And funnily enough, that's actually a big reason why Pokemon didn't print as many cards in the last year as they did the year before, because, the whole Scarlet and Violet era didn't really take off. But as you can see, as soon as Pokemon TCG Pocket came out, you can see the search volume is far beyond anything we've seen even during the 2020 and 2021 boom. So the Pokemon TCG Pocket, along with Prismatic Evolutions coming out at this perfect time, created this wild hype. Literally, as you can see, search volume doubled. Now, here's the issue with that. Number one, you had Prismatic Evolutions releasing, okay? Now, Prismatic Evolutions was always going to be popular because it was Evolving Skies 2.0. If you've never heard of Evolving Skies, well, Evolving Skies was the Eevee themed set of 2021, and kind of it's one of the first sets that started the whole Pokemon investing and how quick sets can kind of rise in value. And of course, Evolving Skies booster boxes are, outside the realms of common sense in terms of pricing at the moment. But of course, everyone said, including myself, hey, when the next Eevee themed set comes out, we're going to go hard, and that was Prismatic Evolutions. So you had the Pokemon TCG Pocket boom, and you had Prismatic Evolutions releasing. So you kind of had 2 things bringing hype back at the same time. And of course, now you can see Pokemon cards are dropping a little bit in popularity from that big hype period that they had. Probably means you're going to probably find more product in store because the popularity or the hype period has calmed down, though we have a new threshold with how many people have entered the hobby. So Pokemon is adjusting to this right now, though I think there is a big amount of fatigue happening with collectors at the moment because, like I said, you've got the Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. It's pretty much on half price, but a lot of people are saying, hey, you know what, that Eevee was amazing, but we've now got this Eevee in Prismatic Evolutions and we've got all these Eeveelutions, but oh, wait, the black and white set, look how many new illustration rares are coming out. People are just being a bit more picky, and they've got so many options to choose from when it comes to Pokemon cards that when they're looking at at their cards, they're like, what is really that valuable at the moment? Now, also, if you have been enjoying the video, my name's Phil and I cover topics relating to the Pokemon TCG. Feel free to subscribe for future videos. Though another area we also need to talk about is that, it's financially hard to collect Pokemon cards at the moment because Pokemon booster boxes and Pokemon products are more expensive now than they were before. Last year when you were collecting Pokemon cards, you could get Pokemon sealed product at a deal. You'd be able to get it at a good price. Nearly every set could have been bought under retail price. But I think with this whole price increase as well has made it a little bit harder to collect Pokemon cards as well. Now, one thing to understand as well is the demographic of Pokemon collectors are in a higher income bracket than before. Pokemon cards are not collected by just kids anymore. What's actually really interesting about Pokemon cards is you have a real widespread amount of people that collect them. You've got kids that collect them, you got teenagers, you got young adults, and you've got millennials and business owners who are now purchasing Pokemon cards. Now, here's the difference with what's happening right now. Back in the vintage kind of boom of 2020 and 2021, a lot of people who collected back then, their incomes have gone up. And you know what that means? More money in their pocket. So now you've got bigger whales or more people with a bigger income able to kind of play in this game. And that's also causing a lot of upwards pressure on prices. But here's the thing, what a millennial likes to collect is going to be very different to what, a younger generation kind of collector is collecting today and what they're going to get nostalgic for. Doesn't mean it's going to be a one-for-one link, okay? Because you've got this whole generation that loves the whole Generation 1, Kanto, the whole base set, all that. But the new generation that grows up, maybe they won't be that nostalgic for that as well. So it's going to be an interesting crossroad. But in terms of the crash that is happening right now with modern, I think there is too much upwards pressure, too much money kind of being thrown at the hobby without people thinking about what they're throwing their money at. And of course, now people are getting a little bit bearish on their cards. Yes, it's in conjunction with the whole European and US summer period, but at the same time, people are just asking more questions. Now, also, one of the key areas is that Pokemon cards are more in demand, but also way more cards are getting printed. And it just seems collectors are unaware of just how much stock is available in the market right now. Talked about it before, man, but you had 10.2 billion Pokemon cards printed last year alone. Sure, it wasn't as much as the year before, but you're still dealing in the billions of cards. I mean, this year that's coming up, you're probably even going to get more than that, right? When you put this on top of one another, it just starts getting ridiculous. And I think that's why there's also been a little bit of a sway to vintage at the moment, because people are looking at pop reports. I mean, when you look at some of the pop reports of vintage versus the pop reports of modern, you start saying, wow, you know what? These vintage grails, they're actually scarce, dude. These are where rarity is at. Now, also, I know I mentioned that I'm going on a live stream in this video, though the easiest and quickest way to get notified about live streams and giveaways is through my channel's Discord. If you set up the correct roles, you'll be instantly notified when it happens. You can also connect with over 8,000 dedicated Pokemon collectors. The Discord invite is in the video's description. Now, one area that collectors actually tend to forget is that people love cards when they're popular and when they're trending, but when their time is gone, they just simply aren't in the limelight anymore. I mean, when we look at cards like the Golden Snorlax from Chilling Reign back in 2021, this was one of the most in-demand chase cards from Chilling Reign. Everyone was obsessed with this Snorlax. Though as times went on, this card is hardly even considered a chase card anymore, and it's lost a lot of its charm. Same thing when we look at the cards from the Sword and Shield era that were once trending. The Golden Zacian, that's had a huge price reduction. The Golden Zamazenta has also experienced a massive price crash. And it's not like these cards weren't desired. These were once very desired cards from the early Sword and Shield era. Or even the Miriam Special Illustration Rare, which was once the most in-demand card from Scarlet and Violet base set, and even the Iono Special Illustration Rare from Paldea Evolved. All these cards at one point were trending and they were desired when the trend was there. And that's what you have to understand, that Pokemon just always recycles what's popular. People love cards when they're hyped. Once they end, it just continues to dip. Now, as much as modern Pokemon cards are crashing, there's a huge change happening right now. In fact, while modern Pokemon is now crumbling, vintage Pokemon cards are soaring in price. For example, the Skyreach Charizard went from 28,000 US all the way down to 9,500 US, and now it has completely recovered back to its original high point. Though there's actually a key reason why vintage is climbing so much in value, and I reveal that in this video here. Within this video on screen, I go deep into the reason why vintage Pokemon cards are currently climbing so much in price. If you enjoyed this video, click the video that's appearing on screen, and I'll see you on the next video.